morning all again. I think we'll kick off and people can join in and catch up. So thank you all for joining us this morning for our second webinar in our series with IT at Cork. This session is Demystifying the Digital Transformation Journey for SME Leaders. So look, it's going to be a great session. So thanks all for joining. My name is Annie Fitzgibbon, Director of Member Services with Cork Chamber, and we're delighted to be partnering with IT at Cork around this webinar series for SMEs. So it's great to have you all here today. I know there's some, I think, tired people after a very, very busy and frenetic morning yesterday at the Tech Fest, which seems to have gone extremely well. I couldn't make it myself, but I know there's a lot of people here that were at that also. So it's a great week of activity from IT at Cork, and it's great for people to be back together again, face to face. So look, we might keep mics off today, except for our speakers. We are recording this session just to have, and you might just use the chat box for any questions along the way, and we'll pick them up along the way. So again, thanks so much to IT at Cork. Kevin O'Regan, Director with Radius Technologies and Board Member of IT at Cork, is going to facilitate this session. So I'll allow Kevin to introduce the speakers and take the session from here. But I just want to thank, first of all, our two sponsors, Cork Chamber SkillNet and IT at Cork SkillNet, for supporting this series as well. So I'm going to hand over to Kevin now and enjoy the session. Thanks all.
Thanks very much, Annie, for that introduction. Appreciate it. Well, welcome all everybody to this IT for SME series. And today we're going to attempt to demystify this term, digital transformation. I think it's an interesting term because it's quite a new term compared to some other technical terms. Like, for example, cloud computing has been with us a long time, but it still causes confusion. And you know, when you ask people what their understanding of it is, you know, you can get various different answers. And I think likewise, this newer term, digital transformation, I think is causing a bit of confusion with people. And hopefully we'll demystify that and break down some of the barriers. I suppose before we kick in, as an introduction, I did a little bit of research this morning and I popped onto Google. Salesforce would say that digital transformation is the process of using digital technologies to create new business processes, culture, and customer experiences. So that's Salesforce take on it. Citrix would say that it's the strategic adoption of digital technologies to improve process productivity, deliver better customer and employee experiences. IBM is a shorter definition. They say it's just a digital first approach to all aspects of a business. I did look at Gartner, but to be honest, I'm not even going to go there because I don't think I could have pulled a quick definition that I could put up in front of you. It's quite complicated. So hopefully over the next 30 minutes, we can break this down into practical terms for everybody. I would like to, first of all, introduce the panel. First, we've got Conor Buckley, who's CEO of Granite Digital. Noel Delan, who's director of the IT director.ie, and a very special welcome to Paula Cogan, who is the CEO of Cognate Health. And I think Paul has been very brave today because Paul is going to share her experiences in her organization's digital journey. So welcome everybody, and thanks very much for your time today. I think before we get started, it might be a good idea just to brief set the context, maybe just to give a brief introduction from each of the panelists. Noel, can you just start by just giving a brief 1 or 2 minute introduction to yourself and your company? Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So my name is Noel Delan. I'm the owner of IT director.ie. So basically, I guess I've over 35 years, hard to believe at this stage, right? Operations, plant management, supply chain experience, and over the last 20 years kind of focusing on IT and the multinationals. So I've gone out my own a few years ago, kind of with a real kind of keen focus on business strategy and how you enable that through digital technology, right? So it's kind of starting with the business side of it, and then how we enable that through digital, technologies, right? A lot of businesses kind of don't know where to start, so that's kind of my sweet spot, right? How do I put a plan in place? What do I look at? Kind of helping people implement project management.
Very good. Thanks very much, Noel. Conor, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no problem. My name is Conor Buckley. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Granite Digital here in Cork. So we're the largest indigenous digital agency in the country. We have a team of 80 professionals split between Cork and Dublin. So we have UI, UX engineers, digital marketers. So essentially, I suppose the piece we'd come into in terms of digital transformation projects would be the implementation. So while we would do some of the strategy and planning, it would be more in terms of actually implementing some of the actions out of those plans is where we'd be strongest. As I said, we have a very large team, and we've been, I suppose, experienced over 20 years in technology, delivering technology projects. So yeah, been at it a long time.
Very good, thanks. And Paula, would you mind just giving us a little bit of a background? Much appreciated.
Thanks, Kevin. So yeah, Paula Cogan, currently CEO of an occupational health provider, Cognate Health. So I joined Cognate Health in 2020, having had 25 years of experience of the hospitality sector. Cognate Health is a family-owned and operated organisation established in Cork over 20 years ago. So occupational health is, I suppose, again, looking for a definition, Kevin, putting it very simply, it's where an employer decides to support an employee with medical assistance, and generally that would be a decision made associated with your work environment and workplace. So when I joined the company in 2020, we had 18 employees. We're now at 65 and counting. So COVID has very much changed the way occupational health as a service is delivered. And we're very excited to be part of that as well. So our client base, while we're an SME, our client base actually goes from all of the large FDI multinational organizations here in Ireland right the way down to smaller organizations, maybe of 5 or 6 employees. And most of our services are health and safety requirements and legislation, but a lot now in the mental health and wellbeing space, as you can imagine, as companies support employees who are now moving from fully remote into a hybrid and coming back into the work environment as well.
Great. Thanks, Paula, for that. Much appreciated. So maybe what we'll do is we'll kick in. We have some questions there for the panel. And Noel, if I just turn to you first, I suppose, look, to kick it off, the big question, your interpretation or from your experience, like, what is a digital transformation, and can you explain that to the audience?
Yeah, I guess, look, there's kind of religion almost around this thing, right, around transformation versus adoption versus improvement, right? I'm not that religious about it, right? I mean, it comes from 2 points from me, right? I mean, it's either an overall business transformation where you might be looking at business model and stuff like that, or where you might put, choose an individual business process where technology is just an enabler to improve that. I guess, look, for me, my preference would be to kind of, for the organization to map out a kind of a rough 3-year plan, looking at challenges and opportunities that they have in their business, and, placing those, kind of prioritizing those, right? So that might be kind of growth. So they might be looking for new markets. That doesn't mean, necessarily new geographic markets, but looking to get into new sectors and kind of build out capabilities. They may have competitors that are after, maybe are kind of chomping at the bit behind them, technology-wise, maybe service enablement-wise, and they're looking to either catch up with a competitor or maybe leapfrog them. A lot of people look at technology from the point of view of how I can kind of drive efficiency in my business. So looking at, manual processes, paper-based processes, and ultimately looking at ways that they can kind of reduce costs, right? I guess higher up the kind of the spectrum for me, right, would be things like looking at new products and services, right? So you may have a product today, right, that you might be able to wrap an information-based service around, right? Or you may be able to kind of really kind of look at your business model, right? So business model for me being how you create, deliver, and key kind of capture value, right? So are there ways that using technology that you might be able to partner with somebody else, or you might be able to bring a series of integrated services together, right? Using technology, right? I guess, look, one of the kind of game changers for me, right, are how you see, by streamlining internal processes, kind of eliminating unnecessary steps, you may be able to kind of game change your industry, right, from the point of view of maybe turnaround on orders and the kind of service levels that you can provide, right? So, very broad. I guess my preference would be looking at it as a kind of a couple of a year plan and kind of stepping out. What are your business goals? And then saying, okay, what do I need to enable those?
Very good. And I think what's interesting there about your point is that in a lot of the audience today might feel that, to be comfortable with digital transformation or to start with digital transformation, you need to be very confident with the technology. I think your point there is that, you know, it's everybody here is expert in their own business, and to understand their business and to understand, you know, the threats or the opportunities in their business. And then once you decide where you're going, look at what digital tools are out there to get you there, you know, I think is a valid point, you know.
I think people probably focus too early on the technology, to be honest, right? Way too early. And the technology has become the easier bit in a way, right? Once you get your kind of business processes and your requirements mapped out well right from here.
Very good, very good. Conor, just turning to you there, I suppose if we kind of break it down a little bit and in practical terms now, right? I think Noel mentioned a few there, but if we can just home in on kind of what practical ways that a digital transformation can impact a business, and kind of maybe the kind of, you know, impacts that you've seen in real life experiences, you know, over time, companies that what opportunities they've grasped through a digital transformation.
Sure. Yeah. I suppose, look, I'd agree with Noel, and we take a very similar view that, you know, people look at digital transformation as, you know, you need a new business model at the end of it, whereas we've come at it very much from, it can be everything to improve your business, from, you know, making relatively modest technological changes that'll improve efficiency, right through to potentially new products, new services, and business model change. So we'd have covered everything in between. And I suppose in terms of impact, I mean, the impacts are right across the business, and we've seen all of these. And in some cases, with a large digital transformation project, you'd have, you know, a number of these. In some cases, it might be a smaller project. You may have one or two, but, you know, sales growth is something that we'd see. Reduced costs, efficiencies. That's often where people start. You know, they just look at how can I automate some of the processes and take some cost out. Retaining customers. So much better customer engagement, much better service delivery, which again helps you retain the customers, and profitability, obviously, by being more efficient and getting some of that sales growth. Reducing risk is an important one, particularly for businesses now. There's more compliance, there's more governance that required, there's more regulations, you know, and just being able to reduce that risk by putting the right, you know, technologies in place and strategies in place. And in some cases, it's down to even survival. I mean, there's businesses, you know, where their margins are being eroded by new entrants and by people who are disrupting, whose customers are being essentially, you know, they're losing customers to new entrants as well. And if they don't take a fairly significant change in approach and use all of the tools that are available, it could literally be survival. And I suppose just some examples of those, Kevin, would be that we'd have seen just in terms of efficiencies. With everything from automated scheduling, you know, getting payroll and billing, you know, payroll right through the bank and into revenue and all this kind of thing. You know, just simple efficiencies in that regard. But it's also a lot of new tools in terms of onboarding employees successfully, particularly when they're at home. You know, using technology well to make sure they have a very good experience at the first interaction with the organization when they're actually at home. They're not coming into the office. You know, and using technology to help onboard new employees. Using technology to onboard new clients, particularly in financial services and elsewhere, where you're all onboarded entirely using an application. And again, that comes down to, you know, we've got chatbots for customer engagement, chatbots. We've seen a lot of work on chatbots for collecting money from both consumers and businesses. And then I suppose one of the big areas we would see would be customer engagement. So, you know, technology really allows you better engage with your customers. Recent surveys are showing over 50% of consumers now want to be contacted using digital channels. Now, if you don't have digital channels, you know, they will go somewhere else. So we built an application for a pizza company, and you know what they would tell us is that people would go into the pizzeria, they'd sit in the back, and they'd order on the application, even though there was a guy 20 feet away that they could ask. But they would prefer still to use the application, and that's only increasing. You know, we've built applications for business to business as well, where people can order their coffee cups, they can order their, you know, their widgets, whatever they need to run their business. And it's a very simple application that they log into, they place their order, it has their price book loaded, it feeds back into Dynamics or feeds back into their accountancy program or whatever it is. And all they do is press a few buttons, everything is ordered. And it's again about customer engagement. If you make it easy for your customers to engage with you using technology, they will engage more with you. If your competitors make it easier, well, chances are they may well then go to them. You know, we've seen increasing value of service. So again, getting more out of the assets using technology. Like a very simple example, even with kids rides where you have to put your €2 in and the fire engine or whatever it goes up and down, and you're walking past it all the time. And I used to say to my 6-year-old, I have no change. And now she says, oh, but daddy, you can just tap now, so very simple use of technology. And I'd say their revenues have increased significantly per unit. For me alone, I'd say for one of them. But there's a lot of things you can do to increase the value of the service you're currently delivering using technology, and it's using it wisely. It's all of these elements that come together to help transform a business. Reducing risk is a very important one. We've done a lot of work around applications where people log in, they'll take a very simple health and safety training course, a couple of simple questions afterwards. One, have they viewed it? Two, have they answered those simple questions? Have they read the security policy? If they haven't, you can send them reminders. If they still haven't, you can send a reminder to their team lead. Again, if you were doing an ISO audit, you can just pull this off. Yeah, everyone's read the security policy. Here's when they read it. Here's who read it. It's it really helps hugely with be it health and safety issues to show that people have been trained, or be it an ISO, or be it anything like that. So in terms of your governance, your risk, all of that can really be helped hugely by using some of these technologies and strategies that are all available currently. New service offerings would be another one. I mean, everyone saw it during the pandemic. You had restaurants particularly, they were closed. They all started offering a collection service. A lot of maybe even higher end restaurants that wouldn't have been in collection and delivery before. There's a great restaurant we used to go to in West Kerry that went to collection, and now they haven't reopened, and their model has essentially changed entirely to it's now they make a lot more money out of people collecting the food than they used to about having people sitting at tables. So they decided not to bother have people at tables anymore. So and business model change is obviously if you go to a full digital transformation strategy, then it is business model change that people are talking about. Two of the largest tech companies in Cork, indigenous ones, started out doing something entirely different. And are now very successful, and they just follow their customers. They made the changes that they needed to make, and now they're hugely successful. And look, just a couple of final things. Just some of it is defensive. We've done applications for a lot of hospitality clients where the big aggregators like Booking.com and some of these others were eating into their margin. So by using very simple loyalty programs, they were able to offer better pricing and take direct control of the customer back from again, their margins were under serious threat. So it's all about, I suppose, innovation, and a recent survey again, or I suppose prediction from EY was that the S&P 500, that half of the companies in that won't be there anymore in just 5 years. So half of them will be out of it, and there'll be another 250 companies in there, and they won't necessarily be technology companies, but they will be companies that use technology well, and take some of these digital transformation journeys. They'll be the ones that are replacing some of the guys that don't do so well. So I suppose that's very quickly some of the areas that we'd have seen, all of the various impacts you can have on your business.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I suppose like what's really interesting there is you mentioned those two companies that completely changed their business and saw an opportunity and used digital technology to do that. And I think, I happened to be traveling recently, and I was in an airport where we decided to go for a burger in a Big Mac, and it was just amazing to see everybody standing in front of the counter with their phones, ordering, and people five steps away, and they weren't interested in talking to them. They were more interested in just inputting. So hugely interesting. Noel, if we just go a little bit further now, right? So we've got a kind of an overview there of the opportunities. If we break it down to internally within an organization, if some of the audience today now they're considering this, and they're considering, like, where do I go, where do I start, like what would be your kind of overview of a process, or how to get into the meat of this for the audience today? What would your suggestions be there?
Yeah, look, I mean, everyone's heard horror stories around technology implementations. I've seen some myself, and had a lot of learnings out of that over the years. I think the technology has become less of the problem, and it's actually the approach that people take to implementing these in their business. First of all, this is typically these tend to be fairly big, invasive, projects. If you're replacing if you don't have a kind of an information management system like, I don't know, maybe a Microsoft Dynamics or something like that today, right? And actually bringing one of those, a system like that into your company, right? I mean, I say to people, look, this is like kind of changing the whole nervous system of the organization, right? And the projects can kind of stutter a little bit in organizations. So the first thing for me would be really building a kind of strong case for change. Sometimes you may have a burning platform, so you may literally have an IT platform that's gone out of date, or you may have a customer or a client that's insisting on you having a certain capability in place, or a competitor is really kind of jumped ahead of you, and now there's that sense of urgency, right? That's a really good thing, I have to say, right? If you're coming at this from a kind of a more strategic point of view, right, you really need to kind of dig deep and build that kind of case for change in the organization, right? Because these projects are tough, right? And you need to be able to kind of sustain them through the whole kind of life cycle of the project, right? So what are the drivers, right? What are the reasons, right, for doing this? What happens if I don't do it? So really kind of establishing that up front, right? Ideally for me, kind of put this always in the context of the business strategy, right? So kind of map out, your 3-year plan. What is your plan, right? Is it, are you looking at growth? Are you looking at new markets? Are you looking at kind of a different business model completely? Are you looking to kind of game change your service levels and kind of turn things around much faster, right? So when you kind of map that out, right, and you basically say, okay, this is where we're going from the business point of view, and these are the things that we must do, right? Then you're saying, okay, what are the capabilities that I need to put in place to make that happen, right? So it's not all going to be technology. I mean, there may be organization capabilities, plant equipment, different things like that, right? Mm-hmm. I guess the other thing for me, right, I see is that people don't often put their best people on this, so you're now looking to kind of redefine your business, right, for the future. You're looking at kind of saying, okay, what's my, best shot at this from a new process point of view? And often, I see that people will put people on the project that are kind of least painful to put on the project. And that's a kind of not a route for success, in my opinion, right? I mean, if you're defining out what your business looks like for the next 3 years, right, you want people who kind of in your business for a fair while. They know your customers. They've been out there at the coal face, talking to customers, looking at what kind of levels of dissatisfaction they might have today, kind of what the customer's talking about, looking at down the road. They also know your industry. So I mean, your internal business people, right, that know your business, know the industry, right? You need those involved in the project. They don't need to be full-time involved in the project, but I think you need to have them at the right time. That's really key for me. I often see, I say to people, if there isn't pain in putting this person on the project, they're the wrong person for the project. Then I guess the next thing for me, right, is if it's any kind of a sizable project, to have, good project management, so kind of map out the stages of the project and have good change management as well. So that means, people resist these things, right? I mean, people may be unhappy with what's in place today, but actually changing and making changes like this, and making changes to systems and making sure that people take them on board. I've often been involved in big system implementations, certainly when I was working for multinationals, tens of millions, and you go up to plants afterwards and people are still kind of, they've got an Excel sheet, that they're still working away on, right? So that whole kind of change management, project management, and actually making it and driving it through the business, right? People have busy day jobs. So you need someone who's kind of stepping out the plan and basically, holding people accountable, right? Having good escalation processes, right? So like, I'm not talking about technology here, again, you'll see, right? I mean, it's how you, get your best people, map out your business processes, have good project management, and have good escalation as well, right? I mean, having a process of where behind, who do we go to, who's going to kind of help us unblock this in the organization, right? From the point of view of, selecting software, things like that, again, I would say do your homework first. So kind of process map out what you must have, what's nice to have. Without these capabilities, this project isn't worth doing, right? I mean, they need to be redlined for me, right? Often technology projects become about the technology, and people, they're kind of weary. They're kind of 9 months into an IT project and they're kind of weary and they just want to get the lights on in the technology, right? And they've kind of given up on what were the original benefits, right? So they kind of need to be always up in lights for me. And so, what are the must-haves, right? And kind of keeping those, right? Look, I tend to look at things like cloud or SaaS first. But the one other thing for me, right, is kind of, I always say, no beauty contests, right? So this is where you bring in the vendor, and the vendor comes in and he basically shows you the product, right? And he shows you all the features and it looks amazing, right? But for, I'm much more a fan of the approach where, you're giving the vendor, these are my requirements, show me, right? I mean, look, to be fair, a lot of vendors interpret requirements differently. It may be something that's kind of coming in the next version, that type of thing, right? So be the doubting Thomas, right? When it comes to software, I would also say, right? Because, like I said, I've seen people kind of interpret requirements, and then when you're kind of halfway into the project, you're too far down, and you're kind of realizing, well, maybe one or two of the key capabilities here, right, don't exist, right? So kind of show me, right? I would always say, 15, 20 years ago, they used to have these kind of beauty contests, right, where the vendor would come in and kind of show you the whole, show you their software from their point of view, right? But you want them to show it from your point of view. So you want to say, can you show me how that particular thing, operates on the system, right? And I guess the other thing for me, right, is I always say to people, a puppy is for life, right? So I don't know if people remember, maybe 10 years ago, right, they used to run these kind of ads on television, right, around Christmas time, right, and people, kind of rushed out and bought a puppy. It happened during COVID as well, apparently, right? And, the watering and feeding and looking after these IT systems, right, you need to think about that, right, and how you're actually going to do that and who in the organization is going to do that. In this day and age with cloud and SaaS-based, systems, you probably don't need deeply technical people, but again, you need people who are going to, become the kind of super users. They're really going to kind of get the last bit out of the system, right? I mean, typically when you implement these systems, the first couple of months, you're actually less efficient, than you might be, right, for a month or two. And then you actually start to basically see the efficiency climb. But you really need people that are kind of, driving that last bit out of the systems, right? So that would be my general kind of approach.
Very good. And I can take from that, Noel, that the devil really is in the detail there from your point of view there, and you need to get under the hood and understand what you're trying to achieve up front, So thanks very much for that. Paula.
I feel like we did everything the wrong way around. I know.
So you're like, appreciate your patience now, right? So we've had the theory, and now it's just to have a little chat about the practical side of it. And
yes.
Look, I suppose, just to kick it off, really, there's two questions we could start off with: the why, as in, like, why did you decide to do this, and maybe the how, like, how did it go for you? Like, would be great,
Yeah, so we are, I feel like somebody on Alcoholics Anonymous. We're in the throes of it. We're not finished yet. We are probably, Noel will have a much better idea as where we're at, but I'd say we're probably 50% there as part of the project at the moment. I suppose just to give kind of some context, when I joined the company in 2022, I had moved from a very large international hospitality company called the Doyle Collection, where there were over 1,500 employees, and there was a team of about 20 that were involved in a digital transformation project for 4 years. Little did I know I would be moving into another organization, and no team associated with it. So when I joined, a decision had been made to, again, as Noel had mentioned, it was really driven by an end of life scenario with our occupational health administrative system that we were using at the time. A decision had been made to upgrade that with the existing provider when I joined, that had been made prior to me joining. So then when I joined the organization and we started into the process, it became very evident to me that this system wasn't fit for purpose. So I suppose, as my old boss used to say, a CLM, it could have been a career limiting move, but I decided to put a stop to it after 8 weeks and said, look, this isn't going to get us where we need to get to as part of our digital transformation strategy. We actually didn't have a digital transformation strategy to begin with. As I say, it was driven by end of life for one system that we were using. So we went out to market, and thankfully there was actually a better system out there that had only come into the Irish market in a couple of months before we started implementing it. So, you know, in hindsight, that was good, but it was a very large decision to make as a very small organization, starting out on a digital transformation project. So that was the first piece. It was driven by end of life. It was also driven very much by a real need for expansion in the organization. As I say, we've gone from 18 people up to 65. Our business model can be quite complex because we have probably 3/4 of our organization, our clinicians are actually out on site within organizations. So again, we're dealing with large multinationals who are absolutely to the fore when it comes to cybersecurity and data, and they will only want to work now with providers that are and suppliers that are at the same level as well. So that became very evident too. And also we wanted to be able to offer a best-in-class customer service expectation as well for our clients. We will get to that. Again, that is part of the process we're in at the moment. So that's what really drove the decision. The how, as I was saying to Noel, you probably have to kiss a few frogs beforehand. I thankfully, because of my association with Cork Chamber and IT at Cork, had some virtual cups of coffee during COVID with a number of people I knew, just to get some advice and guidance, really, I suppose, as to where we should start and how we should move on. And that was very fruitful. I would suggest to anybody that's the way to go. I mean, if it's not your area of expertise, but it's certainly not mine, then to go that route. Some of the conversations were very fruitful. Some, you know, we could have spent probably totally in excess of what we're spending on our project at the moment, to Noel's point, when you talk to some people. So thankfully we came down to then a conversation, and Noel was recommended to me as somebody who would fit into the culture of the organization. I think that's really important for an organization, that you find a support, a consultant that will work to your culture as well. We have a very diverse organization. Some people are really tech savvy, you know, want to move forward in this space, and then we have others who find it difficult to turn on a computer. So it's really trying to find that common ground and to bring everybody along as part of the process as well. It always reminds me, if anybody remembers in college, Who Moved My Cheese? So introducing any new systems, you will see people who love it, embrace it, are all about it, and then others who are not. I suppose to Noel's point earlier as well, it's about the team putting together. We didn't even consider that effectively, I would say, from the get-go. Really, there's 4 people in the organization who are driving our digital transformation project, and we thought we could backfill their roles for a couple of months and that would do the job. Absolutely not. You know, we've had to effectively take 2 people out now full-time out of their roles to support this project over the next year and a half. And, you know, doing that in the middle of the project wasn't ideal. It was probably something we should have considered as well from the get-go. And I suppose the other piece then associated with it is the time frame associated with the project. Now, COVID didn't help with the time frame, but I think we were probably unrealistic when we set out before Noel joined us as to what that time frame would look like as well. And then expenditure, again, I suppose we just looked at the cost of the, you know, the systems effectively. We didn't take into consideration the support of a consultant or the backfilling of those roles adequately as well as part of our pre-planning. So again, to Noel's point, we dived in versus standing back and really planning it. But now that we're in it, I think we have a much better view of where we need to get to and how it's not just about, to everybody's point, it's not about just looking at a system in isolation. It's looking at the whole organizational change and cultural change, the digital transformation we bring to the organization as well.
Yeah, very interesting. You know, you mentioned there that book, actually, I had a chuckle because I did read that years ago. And for anybody who wants an interesting read about kind of how to handle change, I think it's a great, you'd read it probably in a couple of hours, but it's very good. But on the people side of it, Paula, you know, how did you approach that? Because it is something that a lot of companies mightn't immediately kind of be aware of. You know, like to get buy-in up front, to get people involved. Like, did you focus a lot on that side of it?
I suppose initially we did, because again, it was going to have an impact on every individual in the organization. I suppose again, the learning for me there was that it's probably sequencing of that some people will be impacted upfront as part of the digitalization project. So again, our central administration team, our finance team, etc., they were impacted immediately because they were involved in, I suppose, the design and layout of the system as well. And we were trying to bring people on the journey, as mentioned, who are, based out on site, but they're only now starting to see the benefit of the system. So we were probably, one size doesn't fit all when it comes to a communication plan associated with a digital transformation project. And we need to consider that certainly as we move forward as well. So giving the accurate information and the timely information to the right audience at the right time, I think would be very, very important. That's certainly been a learning. But yes, bringing people along. I mean, we would have used a number of webinars at the start just to bring people up to speed as to what the project entailed, kind of the timelines associated with it as well. We have an awful lot of people who are incredibly enthusiastic, including our client base as well, who want it implemented tomorrow. But again, it's managing that expectation through communication to say, look, that's not going to happen. It needs to be done on a phased basis, and to Noel's point, we need to get our ducks in a row from the get-go versus going out to somebody and delivering a new process or system that's not, road tested and isn't fit for purpose as well.
Very good, very good. Listen, thanks very much for that, Paula. Just from the point of view of like any learnings you've taken away from it. I know you mentioned there just your learnings about the people involvement, but would there be one or two, I suppose, things that you've learned along the way that maybe if you started again you might do it slightly different? Or
yeah, I think I would certainly leave a little bit more time to planning. As I say, again, our organizational digitalization project really started with an end of life system, so that's not ideal. But again, if we'd had time in the front end, I think we would certainly have saved some time in the back end. I think it's hugely important that you do have conversations. And as I say, that part of finding a consultant to work with and support that's fit for your organization and your organizational structure is very important. And also I would suggest as well that that the communication plan certainly associated with it is very important as well. And we're continuing to learn. I suppose the interesting thing for me has been, if we had gone out to the market when we started, we felt we had to bring that resource in-house. So we needed an IT and digital transformation manager full-time role. But actually it became evident as we went along that role certainly wouldn't be something that would have made sense to fill in the organization. It made sense to have a consultant come in to support during that time. And that has been very timely, because it really means that then we can have the right people associated with the role and look at how we're going to then look at organizational change, for instance, rather than saying, oh, we have an IT manager now and that person is working with us. And I suppose again, the size of the organization became evident that the cost of an IT manager was, would have been huge for us to take, and probably wouldn't and certainly wouldn't be fit for purpose for us for the long term. So just making those planning processes and conversations, I think, and particularly when it's not my area of expertise, really having those cups of coffee with people who have been down the route before and could support you as well. I was thinking, actually, if this webinar had been on 18 months ago, it would have been great. I would probably have gone away with a lot of learnings and been able to put them into place straight away.
Very good, very good. Listen, Paula, thanks very much now for that. That was really insightful. So look, we are coming to the end of kind of the few questions that we have for the panel, and I know that there may be some questions from the audience to come in as well. Just, I suppose, Noel and Conor, for people now that are maybe a bit enthused and are incentivized after this call or after this webinar, what would you consider the kind of next steps for people are, briefly, Noel? And I'll put this to you as well, Conor, but Noel, what would you consider to be, the next steps for people?
Get out a white sheet of paper and actually map out, what your kind of key business, goals are, and maybe put a kind of get a couple of people out of your business, right? Kind of key people in the business, and kind of sit down and kind of brainstorm that, right? I mean, you don't always need a consultant to do that, right? To be honest, right? Your people in your business, right? I mean, what a consultant brings is a bit of structure around that, right? But identify what are the key things you're trying to achieve with the key people in your business. Map it out and make one person accountable for it, right, straight away, right? So they're now responsible for kind of driving it, right, and putting a plan together, you know, and it's just like, you know, keep at it, keep at it, keep at it every week. Have your, you know, push that rock up the hill, as I say to people, right? And eventually, you know, you will see, right? I mean, you know, the kind of significant, you know, changes that you can achieve.
Very good, very good. Conor?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose similar to Noel, I would say, you know, take people out, do a workshop, a half day somewhere, look at what's going on in obviously, you know, the market that you're in, what your competitors are doing. But what we would see, you know, people find a lot of innovation in other markets, being geographically, you know, what are some of the new entrants doing? What are some of the new things that people who are, you know, really making some waves doing? And again, we find a lot of the time there's a lot of, you know, technologies will cross from different industries. So it's not just what's happening in your industry, but, you know, what's going on in the marketplace. But again, going back to what Noel was saying, get your own team together, you know, plan out in 3 years, you know, what do we want to be doing, or where are the obvious things that we can start with in terms of, you know, technology to help us. And then I suppose once you've done that and you've looked at what's in the marketplace, I suppose only then you probably need to talk to somebody about the technology.
Very good, very good. I just see a comment coming in there from it's from Dave Clark, and it's very interesting. There is an EI digitization voucher, a digitization grant, and I know that like a lot of our customers have taken advantage of that over the last number of months, and it's a real, like, it's a €9,000 grant. And it's designed for, I suppose, a digital transformation consultancy process. There are some prerequisites, but they're, you know, I think it's for anybody over 10 employees. Do you know much about that, Conor? Have you or no?
Yeah, we've seen quite a bit of it. Yeah, and it's very good. It really does. I mean, you can make a lot of progress with that kind of, even just that kind of budget, to get a strategy documented, to get someone in. As Noel said, look, a lot of the time somebody coming in is more facilitating. Really, the information needs to come from your own team. But yeah, it's very, very useful. To be fair to Enterprise Ireland, I think it's a very easy application, and they're very, very keen to help businesses on this journey. So, you know, I think it's definitely something people should look at.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I've done a few of those, and I guess, look, when you want to start working with EI, right, they like to see, you know, a kind of a strategy, right? So and then there's other opportunities to come back for funding, further funding for EI, right? But they kind of like to see it in the context of an overall picture for the organization, right? And that's what that allows you, help you, you know, to achieve, right? And you can kind of do a deep dive. You can either do an overall one, or you can do a deep dive in, you know, kind of you know, customer services, or a kind of a lean process, or whatever, right? I mean, it's a really good process, I think, right? I mean, and it's a nice chunk of money, right, to be honest, right, you know, for a kind of a small to medium-sized organization, right, you know.
Yeah, it's very substantial. Yeah. There's just one question came in there. It's from Noel. Just about technologies, right? I suppose the question is, you know, how do you start? Okay, so you've looked at your business, you've kind of looked at, you know, your internal processes, you looked at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, you know, what it is, whether it's a burning platform or whether it's opportunities. But I suppose it does come back to the question is, like, how do people find out what technologies are out there, or how do they start kind of looking to see, you know, what's the match between technology and maybe their business requirements? Open to either one of you guys, whichever one you want to take that.
You take it if you like, or do you want to jump in, Conor?
Yeah, I suppose that is it's a difficult one to answer without seeing, you know, what the gaps are. But I mean, I suppose you could use some of that Enterprise Ireland money to sort of plan out what it is you need to fill the gaps. I mean, there's so much technology out there, and we find that even as a company that's working with technology constantly, it's always evolving, it's always changing. I know Paul has said that they ended up using a system that was only on the market 2 months. You know, if they had started the process 6 months earlier, obviously wasn't available. So there's always new things coming along. So that can be difficult. And I suppose it is a case of asking people, you know, who are more familiar with technology, or bringing in somebody at that point. Like, when you have mapped out your strengths, your weaknesses, when you have done your gap analysis, when you do kind of know, look, these are the areas really that are going to benefit from additional technology, then I suppose at that point you kind of probably do need to bring somebody in and say, look, what technologies are available, what are the benefits, what are the strengths, the weaknesses? Because, you know, as Noel mentioned earlier, every technology vendor will come in and tell you how fantastic their solution is and that it will deliver for you. and some of them will and some of them won't. So I suppose you need to be very clear in your requirements, and even getting somebody in to do that, do a requirements definition. What exactly do you want the technology to do? But until you have all of that done, it's kind of hard to say which piece of technology is right. Because in a lot of cases, there may be 4, 5, 6 pieces of technology that will do a perfectly good job. And so sometimes it is looking out that bit into the future and saying, okay, what other things do you want to do? Because this one integrates very well with other things. This one maybe doesn't play so nice with other technologies. So depending on what you want to do, again, there's very often multiple solutions.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's, and again, look, if you can, this doesn't have to be a massively deep dive process, right? But I mean, if you map out your kind of 2 or 3 years, right? Because I've seen people do the opposite, 2 different things at different ends of the spectrum, right? They go out and they buy something that's completely unsuitable for them and that it's way, way bigger than what they need, right? Or the other side of it, right? They buy something, right? And then a year later, they're looking to do, the next step in the process, and the software can't do that, right? So have a kind of at least a kind of a 3-year, idea where it is you're trying to go, right? And I also say the less technology, the better, right? I mean, consume it and kind of have something that you can kind of take bite size out of, ideally, right? Because that's going to be your most likely success, and it's also going to give you a best bang for your buck, right? I mean, go after the worst, the toughest area in your business, get something in there, right? And also you get a big win, right? And people kind of be enthusiastic about it, right? And they'll be up for the next step, right? To be honest with you.
Very good, very good. I know I had a conversation with Alan Coleman from the HR Locker there after the last event, and we were discussing hybrid work environment and that, but Alan did talk about when he was developing his organization and his product, after they went through all the mapping out and after they went through all the kind of understanding their business, they spent a lot of time looking at the technology that they were going to employ. And it was about the capabilities, but it was also about the market. It was all about, what are the availability of, say, developers and the skills in a certain technology. And that drove their decision because they didn't want to get, I suppose, committed to a technology that, maybe the level of qualified resources was limited, and all of a sudden they were buying themselves into a kind of a cul-de-sac, so I think that's very interesting. There's another question. Sorry.
Also at that, Kevin, it is the roadmap for the technology. Like a lot of, particularly SaaS products, they'll publish their roadmap. This is what's coming next, so you can see. And the ones maybe that have the same features that they had 3, 4, 5 years ago, you might be slightly nervous there that they're not just moving it along because the market's changing all the time. So similar to your point about having access to enough developers and enough skilled technology people, you also want the product, particularly with SaaS products, you want it moving and improving all the time. You don't want it to be, essentially kind of stuck where you are now, because your business is going to change, your needs are going to change, and ideally you want someone who's improving the product on a regular basis as opposed to it standing still.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, the large global names who are investing in these platforms that can be customized, as opposed to developing a product from the ground up. Your customers are going to look and say, okay, I can take this product and I can customize it to my needs, and it'll always be invested in, like this huge recurring investment in it. Just one question there, Noel. Just somebody has asked there about, if they are looking to hire internally, like what skills should they look to hire in-house, or how should they, what are the options, I suppose, to add to the team,
Yeah, I'd be looking, if I was hiring a graduate, I'd be hiring something like a business information systems graduate, right? I wouldn't be hiring techies, right? I mean, I would, I'd be least likely to hire pure techies, right? Like developers, networking people. All of that stuff should be up in the cloud, right? I mean, it should be all outsourced to a managed service vendor, right? They're going to do that better. For me, it's bringing in somebody like a good business analyst with good project management skills, right? So they can actually, they might learn how to do some lean, stuff like that, right? So somebody who can come in and kind of think business process, can talk business, right, to people, right? Can walk into a finance department, map out a process on the wall, right? And then go off and evaluate, right, the kind of software and services that you need, right? But I'd be, now maybe you need a techie, right? But, I'd be less likely to hire techies, right? I think those people that are the bridge between the business and IT, right, are really where businesses should be going right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's technologists who can add value to the business as opposed to, guys that are in the engine room, kind of, I think they can add real value to the business.
That's it. That's like, to me, that's like generating your own electricity, right? That's to me, right? Nobody does that anymore, right? I mean, you buy it, right?
It's coming around again. It's coming around again.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, listen, I think I'm watching the clock, and I'm conscious that everybody's got busy days, so I think we're coming to the end. And I would just like to wrap up the session now. Like, I'd like to thank Conor and Noel and Paula for their time. Really appreciate it. I'd like to thank all the audience that are here today. I hope you got something out of this event. I hope that something in the back of your mind, a switch went off, and it might be the start of something big for your organization. I'd like to thank the members of Cork Chamber and IT at Cork for joining us and for supporting us on the event. I'd like to thank our sponsors, IT at Cork SkillNet and Cork Chamber SkillNet, for the support here for the event. And also, just a final comment, just for everybody to check out corkchamber.ie and it@cork.ie for any future events. So that's it. Listen, thanks very much, and have a good day.